Good afternoon, everyone. The entire central west of New South Wales has been hit very hard in the last 24 hours with flash flooding. Places like Canowindra have received falls of up to 120 mils in the 24 hours to 9 a.m. this morning. The areas of concern are Parkes, Forbes, Eugowra, Molong, Cowra, Canowindra, Blaney, Young, Yass, many communities across the central west, the west and the southern parts of New South Wales. We have 9 major flood warnings in place, current across New South Wales. Of the 107 warnings currently in place, 16 are at emergency warning level, including at Canowindra, Derrawong and Cowra, where residents have been urged to evacuate immediately. And at Eugowra and Molong, people have been urged to move to higher ground. In the 7 hours between midnight and 5 a.m, we've had 140 flood rescues in Eugowra alone. More than 100 of these were rescues from a roof. This means, with a population of 700, more than 1 in 5 residents have been rescued in the last few hours by either helicopter or by boat. This is a very serious situation, not just in Eugowra, but in many places, particularly along the Lachlan River. The ground is so saturated that all it takes is one heavy downpour to cause the type of life-threatening flash flooding that we have experienced overnight and into today. Downstream of Canowindra and Eugowra is the communities of Goolagong, Forbes and Condobolin. These communities are understandably very anxious about what the next few days are going to bring and how it will hamper their recovery efforts, which have only just really started to begin, and where places like Condobolin remain isolated at this time. We have had helicopters operating right throughout the day, whether conducting those all-important life-saving rescues in places like Eugowra, or whether it's related to the resupply of isolated properties and communities. Our emergency services organisations, their personnel and their assets are in full swing today to support our communities and, of course, to save lives. We currently have over 70 local government areas in New South Wales that have a natural disaster declaration in place. This event is now in its 62nd day, and every day it throws up new challenges for our communities and for our emergency services personnel and organisations. We have our base camp, of course, set up at Parkes. It has over 100 emergency services personnel able to assist right up and down the Central West as the floodwaters recede, and we need to get in and do those all-important rapid damage assessments so that people can get back into their homes and businesses. I can also confirm this afternoon that we are welcoming 12 flood rescue operators from New Zealand, and they will touch down in Sydney tonight, and they'll be heading straight to Parkes tomorrow to support the SES and our other emergency services personnel on the ground. The SES is now also working with authorities in Singapore and the United States of America to secure additional support. To conclude my remarks this afternoon, before I go to Commissioner Carleen York of the SES, followed by Steve Bernasconi of the Bureau of Meteorology for their updates, I would like to urge the community to continue to work with us through what is proving to be a very challenging time. The last 24 hours have been very difficult indeed, and for those people that have been awake since midnight or thereafter with the rain pouring down right through that central west area, my heart goes out to you. I understand how difficult these times are, particularly those properties and those communities who have experienced repeated flooding where we are now expecting to see a third peak in as many weeks come down, especially through that Lachlan area. I'd also like to pay tribute and say thank you to our emergency services volunteers from whichever organisation you're in, whether it's the SES, the RFS, Fire Rescue, the Volunteer Rescue Association, Marine Rescue. Thank you so much for all of your efforts. I know it's been a very long night and a very, very big day. I know you're tired and we will get through this. And I want you to know that on behalf of all of the people of New South Wales, we are very, very grateful to you and to your service. On that note, I'll hand over to Carleen York from the SES.
Thanks, Minister. So thank you. So overnight we've been responding to this significant weather event in the areas that the Minister's mentioned. We've had 470 requests for assistance since 5 a.m. this morning, and as said, we've had 173 flood rescues. The weather is a result of severe thunderstorms that the Bureau have been predicting for some days now, and we've seen the results of that severe weather event coming across from the western part of our state, moving its way east. It's really important that we acknowledge all the agencies, as the Minister said again, in what they've done over the last 24 hours in these areas around Parkes, Forbes, Eugowra and other locations. It's been a substantial effort by all agencies. Not only did we pre-position some resources around these small communities, but we have sent in urgently more resources to help those communities at their time of need. We've done a large number of flood rescues from roofs. We've activated the ADF nighttime winching helicopter last night to assist us, and we've had 12 helicopters in the air during the day to help those community members get to safety. We've got a number of warnings out at the moment, and 16 of those are emergency warnings to evacuate now, and I would ask people to heed that warning. We can see how quickly the waters can rise, how quickly flash flooding happens, and the devastation it causes across not only homes but businesses and farmlands across these areas that we've got the warning. And again, I would ask those residents and businesses to evacuate when we ask you to evacuate, because it becomes very dangerous for us to send our volunteers and other emergency service partners in those areas when you have realised the danger that you are in and the danger that you're placing your family in by not evacuating when we tell you to evacuate. Certainly around these locations too, there are many roads that are cut and many roads that are dangerous because of the water over those roads. We've seen over the last couple of months with these continuous rain events, the surface of the roads is severely damaged as well. And when you come across water across the road, you're unable to see the damage underneath the water, and you're unable to assess the risk appropriately for you to make that decision. So if you see water across the road, turn around and find another route, and don't travel around these areas because it is dangerous at the moment. The water will take some time to go down, and we will ensure that we try and get in and do those rapid damage assessments as soon as possible, but when it's safe to do so, and we will allow those residents that have evacuated to go back into those areas. So certainly the river systems that the Bureau, Steve from the Bureau will talk about in a moment, around the Menagerie Creek, Lachlan River and Barwon and Darling rivers are what we are looking at as a priority at the moment. We want you to stay up to date with those warnings. It's really important if you can have a battery operated transistor. We know that there are a number of power outages, and we've been talking with the energy providers in relation to trying to restore those power back to those communities. But again, please be patient. Those technicians in their vehicles have to travel over these same roads, so they can't go across flooded roads. So as soon as they can get in safely to these areas, they will be able to get the power back and running for those communities. So if you need assistance, I'll just remind you that to ring SES, New South Wales SES on 132 500, and if it's an emergency and life-threatening, ring 000. We're working very closely with the police out there as well as all our other partner agencies. There's substantial resources across these areas of the community that need them, and we will respond to those requests for assistance as soon as possible. But again, make sensible decisions, know your risk, and don't overestimate your ability to get through these floodwaters and place yourselves in danger. And with that, I'll hand over to Steve Bernasconi from the Bureau of Meteorology.
Thank you very much, Minister Cook, Commissioner York and Mr Thurtell. Good afternoon. The update for this afternoon is really a focus on the flooding conditions that have resulted from the weekend rain and thunderstorms, and also to touch base on the weather conditions for the rest of the week. I really just want to focus first and foremost on the main flooding conditions that have just been mentioned by the Minister and Commissioner. I really want to point to 4 particular areas. Those areas are in the Macquarie catchment in Bathurst in particular. It's exceeded major flooding this morning at 4.5 metres. It's currently, give or take half an hour ago, it's currently at 6.7 metres and rising. It's added to this rise. It's also got a very fast flow for this particular location, which is making it difficult to stay on top of the rises. It is forecast to reach around 7 metres sometime this afternoon. And to put that in context, the record for Bathurst's flood is 6.7 metres in 1998. There are higher floods potentially in the past, but they don't relate to the same gauges, but it is a significant flood for Bathurst. To put it in further context, the town of Bathurst over the last 60 days has had 4 flooding events where there's been in excess of 4 metres of water in the river. So significant flooding is now occurring again at Bathurst. For the Mandadgery Creek, which is a creek that flows into the Lachlan River at Eugowra, it exceeded major this morning, and this particular event is a good example of the combination of riverine flooding and flash flooding combining. It peaked at 9.7 metres earlier and is falling slowly now. Again, this is one of those moments where we have very full conditions, isolated thunderstorms that just happen to be over that particular catchment, and a very fast rise catches people unawares. Moving further downstream in the Lachlan at Forbes, it's currently at 9.8 metres and rising. It is forecast to get to about 10.55 metres on Tuesday afternoon, and it may actually reach 10.8 metres come Thursday as the peak moves downstream. For Forbes, in 1952, for context, the record flood for there is 10.79 metres, so it really is moving towards potential record flood, albeit equal to. And further downstream in the Lachlan at Condobolin, it's currently major at 7.3 and is steady, but we are expecting renewed rises possible from Tuesday. Broadly speaking, the widespread significant rainfall that we experienced over the weekend has abated. However, we still now have widespread significant flooding. The isolated thunderstorms are still possible over the far northeast of the state today. The main hazard relating to those, though, relates to the damaging wind gusts. There is still a chance of an isolated severe thunderstorm over the north coast on Wednesday afternoon and evening. For Tuesday onwards, isolated thunderstorms are still possible over parts of the Hunter and the mid-north coast on Tuesday, and they're extending east of the ranges on Wednesday. Further on from Tuesday, cooler temperatures are forecast to develop across much of the state on Tuesday and Wednesday in the wake of the system that's passing out to the east. With that, you can expect some daytime temperatures for inland New South Wales that will fall somewhere 10 degrees below average as we move later into the week. With that particular cold burst, and it seems strange to be talking about this given that we're talking about flooding, but we are potentially looking at snow is forecast to develop on the Alps on Tuesday, with snow getting down to levels around 900 to 1100 metres overnight, and there may even be a dusting of snow around the central tablelands come Wednesday. Some notable observations though over the last 24 hours to 9 o'clock this morning. We had moderate to heavy rain, of course, with thunderstorms across most of the state. With those storms, there was over 1 million lightning strikes recorded across much of the state, from the Queensland border up around the Upper Western, right through to the Victorian border into the Riverina and the ACT. Of those million, there's at least over 150,000 were recorded as reaching ground from cloud to ground. Notable rain records for the last 24 hours to 9 a.m. is Canowindra at 120 millimetres and Forbes close by at 118 millimetres, and that was an all-time daily record for Forbes, its highest daily rainfall record in 28 years of records for that town. To put that in context, the average monthly rainfall for Forbes is 50 millimetres, so it's exceeded it in a 24-hour period by twice. Other notable rainfall events over the last 24 hours was Orange at around about 100 millimetres, Bathurst at 87, and Cowra and Parkes equally at around 80 millimetres. Out on the coast, we did see some widespread rain, and that was all generally below 50 millimetres. We do have some severe weather warnings out at the moment. We have a severe weather warning for damaging winds for the south coast, the southern tablelands, the Snowy Mountains, and that has been expanded to other areas, including the central tablelands. We do have a marine wind warning for all coastal waters for strong winds, strong gusty westerly winds, largely akin to what you would expect more in winter than you would in November. And we do actually have also we don't have any severe thunderstorm warnings out at this present time, although we do have a watch out for thunderstorms possible for the east of the state till midnight tonight, and severe thunderstorms possible for parts of the northwest slopes and plains, the northern tablelands and the northern rivers. Going out into Tuesday midnight, the Hunter and the mid-north coast have the possibility of severe thunderstorms. To wrap it all up, today's weather risk really is around the renewed riverine flooding that's the result of the thunderstorms and widespread rain over the weekend, but also the significant gusty westerly winds that are coming across the state over today and the next couple of days. The renewed flooding at Bathurst, Forbes and Canowindra, just to name a couple, are the immediate focus, and downstream locations are being modelled regularly with our forecast being updated to the SES. You can expect some cooler, drier weather over the next few days before there is another rain-bearing system looking likely over the weekend, with that similar pattern of it moving from the west to the east and drawing in warm, moist, tropical air from the Gulf and the tropics. That's all I have.
Questions?
Yes, a question for Commissioner York. The Wyangla Dam is at record spill levels. What does this mean for towns downstream, including Forbes? I know Steve talked a little bit about the numbers and the water level and how close it is to breaking records, but what does that mean for the residents?
Well, it means some of those residents are in danger of having their houses or premises inundated, so particularly farmers with their livestock. We would remind them to try and get them to higher ground. The dam is spilling at the moment, and so that just adds enormous volumes of water into the river that are already, as we've heard, at high levels, as well as the ground being saturated and the effects of this severe thunderstorm from the last 24, 48 hours flowing into those catchment areas. So again, it's important for the community members that are downstream of the dam to understand what their risk is and be aware of what our warnings are based on the forecast of the Bureau. So as the Bureau said, few days of fine weather, but it doesn't mean that it isn't dangerous out there with the river still rising.
Are there any concerns about the dam itself since it's overspilling?
I'm not aware of any concerns about the dam, and in fact there's regular daily meetings with Water New South Wales on not only that dam but the dams across these areas of risk.
How about for the Lachlan River and the wider catchment itself, the communities over there, how serious is the situation for them?
Well, certainly we've heard the forecast about the analysis of the river there around the Forbes area that regretfully for that town that has had really significant flooding, the river levels of 10.8, which may be reached, is as bad as what the floods were just a matter of weeks ago. So we're anticipating analysing that information, seeing how the waters flow, and making sure that those communities, and they have been affected, that those homes will be affected again if it reaches these levels that are forecast.
Thank you. Question for the Minister. You said it's been more than 60 days and we heard talk about damage assessments. What's the cost in human lives, casualties and dollar value so far?
Putting a figure on it financially is very difficult to do at this stage. We know that the agriculture sector has had significant impact, not just down through that Lachlan Valley, but indeed right across New South Wales. And I've obviously been out to Moree. I was in Gunnedah on the weekend. These are places right across New South Wales that produce so much of our agricultural output as a state, and it's all looking very sad at this stage for farmers. There's no question of that. But too early to put exact figures on it because we're still in the middle of the event, hopefully heading towards the end of it, but we're still very much in that response phase and doing that early recovery work that's so important for communities. In terms of human life lost in the last 62 days, my advice is that there have been 4 lives lost throughout this time, none, thankfully, in the event that we've seen overnight. Yet another reason for me to thank the communities for working so closely with the SES, and particularly when evacuation orders are issued. The community continues to work with us, and to that end, we're not aware of any lives at risk at this point.
You also mentioned that there are 12 rescue operations coming from New Zealand. How many personnel is that? Are they bringing some of their own equipment as well? Can you tell us a bit more about the extra help we're getting from outside?
Well, we've got 12 flood rescue operators coming from New Zealand. They will touch down this evening, which is fantastic news, and they'll be straight out to parks and able to bolster our efforts in that community, based in the Central West, of course. And I think to provide you with a bit more detail, I might ask Commissioner York to elaborate. Thank you.
So this is really the first time that New South Wales SES has gone international for resources because of the length and the devastating effects of these floods and continuous effects. We are planning out to at least Christmas, if not beyond, in relation to our resources. So we want to make sure that not only SES volunteers but other agencies and their personnel can get adequate rest, because we know this is going to be a longer operation. So we're very much looking forward to the assistance of New Zealand. Obviously we work very closely with them, coming to help us in our operations. They don't have to bring equipment. We have all the equipment here because it's a matter of giving our personnel downtime, and they step into the boats and the areas that we need them to do their work to help the community. And then, as the Minister said, looking further afield, again, not needing their equipment, we have the equipment here in this state, so it makes it very easy and very quick for them to come out. We just have to make sure we go through the right processes to get them out here, and I thank the Minister for pushing up our requests for assistance very quickly, and we're also talking with, obviously, the Commonwealth in relation to the additional 100 ADF resources to come out to help in that early response and recovery, so the preparation for the community and what we can do once we get in and see what the damage that has been occasioned. So it's a matter of utilising our resources, getting the logistics organised and getting the planning in place so we have adequate resources for the community for what's before us.
And this last question is maybe for you or even Steve to maybe wrap it up on a hopeful note. Could we say that we're over, the worst of it is over, or not really?
I'll hand back to Steve.
Excuse the pun, but that was a bucket pass, Commissioner. Well, it's hard to say what the worst is. We have another weather system coming this weekend, and the potential for it is that they could drag down some more moist, warm tropical air from the tropics. And with that moisture in the air, if we get the right conditions, it could bring more rain across Western New South Wales. As the Commissioner and the Minister have pointed out, all the streams are full, all the soil is full, and all the dams are full. So it really only takes a thimbleful of water to really cause problems in our Western districts at the moment. So as far as is the risk over, no, it's not. And we just need to be mindful of keeping an eye on your weather risk and knowing your risk and knowing your weather. And if I can take the opportunity to push people to keep an eye on that by going to the Bureau's weather app and getting our notifications on your phone, so that when you are in a particular area, those notifications for any weather warnings ping on your phone, and it might annoy you for a little while, but at least you'll know when there are flood warnings being updated, when there's severe weather warnings being updated, and you'll be prepared.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much.